Okay, hi everybody. This is Brian Cates here with my good friend uh, Colonel Roxane Towner-Watkins, and we're going to be discussing uh, SpyGate and many of the recent things that have been going on. We're going to be reminding people about things that happened years and years ago. Because one thing that I've been talking to Roxanne about lately is how many people don't remember the groundwork that was laid for many of these things that are happening right now. They don't remember stuff from 2 or 3 months ago, much less 4 or 5 years ago. So Roxanne had a series of questions that she wanted to ask me.
So I think we want to start with the origins of the General Flynn
Okay.
situation, since we're in good co-
Yeah,
company
that
here,
guy. Yeah,
thanks to
him.
Chad. So you did a lot of research over the last several years on Spygate, Russiagate, all of the above. So take us back to the beginning of what was going on when General Flynn first came onto the radar of the Obama administration towards the end.
Well, General Flynn was fired by President Obama because Flynn was the one person that would not repeat back to Obama all the what I call it, the happy talk that Obama wanted to hear about what was going on in the Middle East, especially in Iraq and Syria. When the rise of ISIS was happening and all of this, all the barbaric things and practices that ISIS was engaged in, mass executions and subjugation of women and all of that. When all that was happening, um, General Flynn was the one person that was pushing back and telling Obama that ISIS was a serious threat and that the administration was not handling Islamic terrorism in a realistic fashion. And so, because he did that, Obama fired Flynn. And, after he joked to the reporters, that now infamous quote that you can put the Lakers uniforms on the JV team, but that doesn't make them, that doesn't make them the Lakers. So Obama kind of dismissed ISIS as the JV team. They were not a serious threat. And then by the time he left office, I believe ISIS had control of an amount of territory that was pretty sizable. They controlled parts of both Syria and Iraq. And then Donald Trump unexpectedly not only announced that he was a candidate for the GOP nomination, one of the first key people to join Trump's campaign was the recently fired General Michael Flynn. He was going to be immediately let it be known that he would be Trump's national security advisor, and that's probably about the last person that Barack Obama wanted to see advising Donald Trump on national security matters would be General Michael Flynn. And then much the DC political class's abject horror, by some arcane act of sorcery, Trump actually wins the 2016 election. And so during this transition period, it's only a very brief transition period. It's only about 3 months from early November until late January. There is a transition period between the outgoing administration and the incoming administration, especially when it's a two-term president is leaving and then a president from the other party is coming in. Then it's a very real transition. If this had been Hillary Clinton, it would have been much of a transition at all. She'd have just kept on with much of what Obama was already doing. But now they faced a real problem because Trump was not the guy who was supposed to win, and Michael Flynn, being in Trump's ear as a national security advisor, presented some very real problems for Obama and the people behind Obama. Were actually running things in Washington, D.C. This unexpected development had to be managed carefully. So, in early January, I believe it was January 4th, there was a meeting in the White House where Obama's is President, James Comey, Peter Strzok, Andrew McCabe, Bill Priestap, Susan Rice, several others, and Joe Biden is present for this meeting. We have Bill Priestap's notes. We know what was essentially a lot of the ground that was covered at this meeting. We know what it was because Bill Priestap very helpfully took detailed notes of the meeting. At some point in this meeting,
and remind everybody who Bill Priestap is.
Now, Bill Priestap was the director of the FBI Counterintelligence Division. They have a counterintelligence department. As a matter of fact, Peter Strzok was Priestap's key deputy. And Strzok was, of course, the guy who was running the Crossfire Hurricane investigation of Donald Trump. So he was Strzok's boss. And so as the counterintelligence guy at the FBI, Bill Priestap is as part of this meeting in the White House on January 4th. And Priestap really helpfully wrote down notes about when the discussion turned to what they were going to do about Michael Flynn. How were they going to get him out of there? It was important to them that they find a way to minimize or even remove Flynn from the incoming Trump administration. There's a point where in the meeting they can't really come up with anything real to pursue Flynn for. He's not guilty of any real crime, so they turn to speculation. At this point, Priestap writes down what is our goal here? It's to find a crime to prosecute him for and get him fired. He says this in the notes. Now, while they're spitballing ideas, because this is a completely innocent man, there's really nothing they can. All these people are crooks in this room. You see, and they're all corrupt. They're all compromised. They're talking about a guy who was not corrupt. They're talking about a guy who was not compromised. Far from it. And they're trying to. Okay, what can we get him on? It's got to be. Okay, we don't know of anything real we can get him on. So, what could we invent to go after him with? Okay, and at this point, it's President Joe Biden who helpfully pipes up and says, well, he introduces the idea of what about if we use the Logan Act to go after Trump? And of course, the Logan Act is like an ancient law from the 1870s or something like that. That had I think, believe there's only been 2 people ever charged with it at that point in American history, and neither person was ever convicted of it. And it's a law that said a private citizen cannot go against, the official U.S. government position and do their own negotiations with foreign countries. It's a violation of the Logan Act, and it's just, it's like it's never been charged against anybody in modern times. And I'll point out, it's still true. Flynn was never charged with violating the Logan Act. It was just an excuse. It was a smokescreen. It was a cover story for beginning an investigation and a prosecution of Flynn. So that January 4th meeting is very key because 7 days later, from January 11th, somebody had taken a transcript of a phone call that General Michael Flynn had with then Russian Ambassador Sergei Kislyak. That was a classified document, by the way. This was a classified transcript of a phone call that General Flynn had with Kislyak in December of 2016, when Obama had just expelled a bunch of Russian diplomats, and so Flynn called Kislyak up on the phone. He was asking the Russians not to overreact to this provocation from Obama. Well, between the January 4th meeting, where it was decided that they would use the Logan Act as an avenue to create a crime for which Flynn could be investigated and hopefully either charged or fired, Between that time of January 4th and January 11th, somebody got their hands on that phone call transcript, which was classified, and they leaked it to a columnist at the Washington Post by the name of David Ignatius. And Ignatius wrote a column that appeared in the Washington Post on January 11th. And the column basically said, what Ignatius said was, I've been shown the transcript of a phone call that General Flynn had with the Russian ambassador. It looks to me like General Flynn is kind of creating his own foreign policy here. And he's not part of the Obama administration, since the Trump administration is not in power yet. And it doesn't look like Flynn has the authority to try to work out any type of secret deal. It looks like he's trying to do a secret deal with the Russian government via this ambassador. And I don't think he's allowed to do that. It looks to me as if General Flynn is violating the Logan Act, and somebody really needs to investigate this Flynn guy and make sure that he's not violating the Logan Act, and he's not out there creating his own foreign policy, because he doesn't have the authority to do that. So that's January 11th. So for a period of about 10 days, you had the fake news freaking out about this news. You have to remember, after Trump unexpectedly won that 2016 election, the entire left side of the country, the fake news media, was in shock. There had to be an explanation. This was so unexpected. And they firmly believed there was simply no honest way whatsoever that Donald Trump could win that election all on his own. There's no way that could happen. He must have had help. And of course, there had already been a fake narrative, a hoax narrative, planted in the media by the Hillary Clinton campaign and her allies in the federal agencies. It had been operative for months, especially since July 2016, that Donald Trump was in bed with the Russians. He was a Russian agent. And so people were already primed and ready to believe the narrative that Donald Trump only appeared to win the 2016 election because the Russian government aided and abetted election fraud, and that's the only explanation that they wanted to hear. Trump had to have cheated somehow. And now, in that environment, the January 11 column from David Ignatius was explosive, because this confirmed what a lot of people were already being led to believe. Oh, we knew it. We knew Trump and Flynn were in bed with the Russians. We knew they were conspiring behind the scenes with the Russian government. And now here's proof of it. There's this phone call transcript. Thank God that phone call transcript leaked. And we now know that Flynn was talking to the Russians. Here's direct proof that Trump and his entire administration are Russian stooges and they're compromised. And somebody really needs to investigate that Flynn fellow. Okay, and so for 10 days between January 11 and January 21, which is the day I believe 2 FBI agents just happened to show up at the White House to have a friendly chat with General Flynn, this narrative was snowballing. It was building and building, and more people were demanding action, and more editorials, and talking heads on CNN and MSNBC demanding something be done about this, because this was serious. An election had just been stolen, and there were serious questions about this Flynn fellow. And so that's why Andrew McCabe called General Flynn up on the phone the day before the interview. I believe that would have been January 20, 2017. Andrew McCabe, Deputy Director of the FBI, he called Flynn up and said, listen, we're closing this thing down, and I just want to send 2 agents to have a friendly chat with you. Mike, you don't need to have any White House counsel or any lawyers present for this interview. It's just a friendly chat. The 2 agents are going to drop by, and just have a brief chat, and you don't need any lawyers there. So basically, James Comey goes on an interview on TV later, and James Comey actually bragged about how perfectly they set Flynn up for this. He totally bought it. He totally thought that this was two friendly agents just coming to him to sit down and have a chat. And of course, what they're seeking to do and we know this from the January 4 meeting, where Bill Priestap took his notes, what they're seeking to do is trying to create a perjury trap to catch Flynn and something they can use against them. That was the only reason for these agents being sent to the White House to sit down and talk to General Flynn. Of course, we know who those two agents are. The first one is Peter Strzok, who everybody is very familiar with. Everybody's familiar with Peter Strzok because in December of 2017, Rod Rosenstein okayed the release of thousands of text messages between the couple who had become known far and abroad as the FBI lovebirds. Peter Strzok, deputy counterintelligence guy at the FBI, and his side dish, Lisa Page, former top FBI lawyer. And it turns out that these people had been carrying on an affair for quite some time, and they were discussing a lot of key elements in their text messages to each other. And of course, so Strzok became almost instantly famous when these text messages were released in December of 2017. I believe it was later in the summer of 2018 or 19 that he's brought out for this very contentious congressional hearing in front of the entire country with these scenes, probably screenshots from that investigation, all the different interesting faces he makes as he contemptuously answers questions from the congressional representatives. So Peter Strzok, very well known, very much in the news. He's got a Twitter account now, and he comments and he makes comments on the development of the SpyGate scandal. So Peter Strzok, very well known. The other guy, however, who was present for that interview with General Flynn, which was orchestrated solely to entrap him as a means of either getting him prosecuted or fired, or both. The other guy is still an interesting story in himself because of what hasn't happened to him. Because the other FBI agent's name is Joseph Pienka. And it was obvious to me by the time I was seriously digging into the SpyGate scandal. I've become a regular contributor to the Epoch Times by July of 2018, and it was clear that two very different paths were emerging for these two FBI agents. One became very infamous, his face very well known, very publicly fired from the FBI. The other guy, Pienka, to this day remains a literal ghost. And I've been writing about this for a long time. I even did a column for Epoch Times called "Why the DOJ's Invisible Man." Because that's essentially what he is. He's the Invisible Man. Because the longer this thing has gone on, and you have like John Durham being brought out into the open in June of 2019 and starting his investigation. And then he became a special counsel. And when one was announced he'd become a special counsel in October, but they didn't tell you this until December of 2020. And all this has been going on, and somehow throughout all of this investigating and all of this public attention focused on the Russiagate hoax and the investigation into how the Russiagate hoax got started, one of the key players who is like present at the creation, so to speak, has literally managed to stay off the national radar. I've seen one picture. I mean, all the years that I've been researching Joseph Pienka and trying to track him down and trying to find out information about him, because he is the key player in this. He's not only there at the interview with Flynn, he's involved in the 302 interview for him fiasco that happens later on. He's involved in spying on Flynn and Trump when he's sent to do a briefing of them. Okay, and his name keeps popping up. Yet here we are, we're like 6 years into this Russiagate scandal, and the guy is literally still a ghost. I found one picture, and I'm still not even sure if that's him. Okay, that's how well they have ghosted this guy. So that's why people need to go back and remember how this started. How was Flynn targeted? Who set that up? Who suggested using the Logan Act to go after him? What did that suggestion lead to? It very obviously led to the classified leak of an intel report containing that
And
phone call transcript.
since you circled back to that, it's important to understand how Flynn's name got exposed, because the normal collection would have been of the Russian ambassador with Flynn's name mask.
Yes.
So you want to talk about that for just a second? Because Ignatius had Flynn's name, not just the fact that it was the Russian ambassador, correct? So
if that's what U.S. Attorney John Bash of the Eastern District of Texas, when it became apparent, all this stuff, I'm telling you, it came out about, the pre-stat notes and Biden's suggestion they used the Logan Act to go after him, and all this stuff came out several years back. And John Bash was the U.S. attorney who was assigned to investigate the unmasking that went on. When you incidentally collect surveillance of that's the best way to say this. We all, our guys are spying on the Russian guys all the time. This is well known. If you call the Russian ambassador up on the phone, hell yeah, let me get on the phone to Sergey, right? And I get on the phone, call the Russian ambassador. Okay, it's understood there are going to be people listening to your conversation. They're listening in. Okay, this is accepted. Everybody knows this goes on. The Russians spy on us. We spy on the Russians. We spy on the Ukrainians. They spy back on us. We spy on the Poles, the French, the Japanese. They all spy back on us. Okay, yes, this goes on. This happens. Okay, but what Roxane's referring to there is called incidental collection. And you're monitoring the Russian ambassador's phone calls. And so anybody that he calls and he calls him, they're going to be swept up in what's called incidental collection. The Americans who call him, they're not being targeted. They're not targets of anything. They're just having their comms with the Russian ambassador incidentally swept up. Okay, now, when that happens, that type of incidental collection happens, the privacy and the rights of the people on that phone call are protected because their names are masked. To find out who the Russian ambassador was talking to, that was an American citizen, you have to follow a process where you have to fill out an application and you have to put it into the intelligence agency, whoever it is that's doing that collection. You have to specifically ask for that name to be unmasked, and your request is recorded and logged and left in a registry. That's how we know that Joe Biden, and when this came out, Joe Biden, there was a long list that was released. Joe Biden was one of the people that asked for Flynn's name to be unmasked for him. And
repeatedly.
He did it, I believe it was 13 times.
Yeah.
But that's just off the top of my head. But Joe Biden was one of the people that said, I want to see who Ambassador Kislyak was talking to here. Okay, so when you go back to all this, you understand all this that went on in early January of 2017. How this was set into motion. Flynn was a massive problem for these people. They were worried about him. They knew They needed to get him out of Trump's ear just as fast as they could, get him out of the White House, get him out of being the national security guy at the White House. And so they have this meeting on January 4th. They hatch this idea. Let's try the Logan Act. Let's see if we can get him investigated. And then hopefully that turns into something that we can prosecute him for, even get him fired for it. And then January 11th, they'll have a leak of a classified intelligence report, a crime in and of itself, with David Ignatius, who writes that column. And then just like 10 days later, 2 FBI agents go into the White House, sit down for a friendly interview with Flynn, and then they go off, and the 2 of them write what's called a 302 report. That's, okay, let's explain a little background here. It's the standing procedure of the FBI. I mean, we live in a digital age. Everybody carries one of these with themselves now, okay? Everybody. The recording and audio is available to anybody. Okay, and so people assume that when you sit down with an FBI agent, that they are going to record everything you say, and they'll film it or at least do an audio recording. Well, that's not true, because the FBI has a rule in place. I don't know if they still have it in place, but at the time they did. The FBI agents are not allowed to do audio or video recording of any interviews with anybody. They're not allowed to. What they are ordered to do, what they're trained to do, is to sit down and do handwritten notes during the interview. They write down handwritten notes. And then after the interview is over, they go back to FBI headquarters or their local office, and they sit down and they fill out on a computer an official 302 interview form, and they type up the notes that they took at the interview. Okay. Now the reason for that is that 302 form becomes the only official record of what was said by the agents and the subject at the interview. There was no other official record that exists. So because that's the only official record, and they often will not do an interview. If you're the subject and you say, "Oh, sure, I'll sit down and have an interview with you, Mr. FBI agent, if I can make my own video recording, audio recording, I'll be happy to sit down." Okay, they will turn you down. They will not agree to the interview, because when they do interviews, they want to have the only official record of what was said. The reason they do this is so that when they decide they want to entrap somebody or they want to claim somebody said something, and then the subject, the person that was interviewed goes, "Oh, no, I never said that. I didn't say that." How are you going to prove that in court? The only official record is the notes those FBI guys took. And there will always be more than one agent at these interviews. So both their notes will say the same thing. And here you are saying, "Oh, no, that's not what I said."
Right.
Okay, but that's not how it works. Their system does not work like that. So they will not agree to do the interview in the first place if you demand on having your own audio or video recording. They'll often just get up and leave at that point. But if you do agree to be interviewed, then the only official record is the record that they wrote down. And this is exactly what happened in the Flynn interview in the White House on January 21. Flynn seemed to be completely caught by surprise. Just as Andrew McCabe is suggesting, he does not have any White House counsel or any lawyers present. It's just him, Strutt, and Pianka. So they sit down and they ask him some questions about his contacts. There were multiple phone calls with Kislyak in December. I believe there was a series of 3 different phone calls. I believe Flynn may have been in the Dominican Republic for these phone calls. And so there was, and picture this happening. Flynn is sitting there, and the 2 FBI agents are sitting on the other side, and they're chatting. Okay, and one of them is taking notes. One is asking questions, and the other one is taking the notes. I believe it would have been Pienka asking the questions because the 302 form that later became a massive scandal in and of itself was typed up by Peter Strutt, and it turns out it was later edited by his side dish Lisa Page, which was a massive violation of FBI protocol right there because only the agents who do the interview are allowed to do
edit.
any editing of the official 302 form. So now that they had the interview and they went away and nothing happened for them. I mean, the interview's in January of 2017, and you don't hear a thing. Um, James Comey gets fired, and I believe it's in June of 2017. Trump fires James Comey, and Comey does his memo thing with Professor Rich. Um, Leaks them to the New York Times, and he goes in front of Congress. He demands the appointment of a special counsel. You know, we need a special counsel to investigate this. And then we end up with the Bob Mueller Special Counsel starting in May. And from May all the way to, I believe it's October. I remember what exact time the Mueller Special Counsel first started giving signs it was about to indict Flynn. I believe it was later in the year, it may have been October, we started seeing reports in the news media that Flynn was about to be charged. I'm surprised it's not they weren't discussing the Logan Act or the fact that he violated the Logan Act. No, he was going to be charged for making a false statement to the two FBI agents that came to interview him back on January 21st. And of course, Flynn was charged, and I don't know if you followed the Flynn case from the start like I did. You know, it's done all the twists and turns and valleys and highs and lows and all the dips that happened in that thing. But a lot of people need to go back and remember, how did we get here? Now, how did it start? Now, a lot of people don't have a clear idea. So much has happened since January 2017, and they don't remember how General Flynn ended up being indicted for making false statements to Peter Strutt and Joseph Pienka. So that's why I just spent the last 30 minutes covering that for you.
Okay, and so we also talked about a letter to Jeff Sessions yesterday, and that led into the Utah U.S. Attorney appointment.
Yeah. Members of Congress, of course, when they discovered that not only was the presidential campaign of Donald Trump being spied on by the federal agencies, his current administration, Trump was sworn in on January 20, 2017, they discovered that Trump's present administration was still under investigation. The investigation started in July 2016 and was ongoing. Okay, and Devin Nunes and others in Congress, Jim Jordan and Mark Meadows, among others, had serious questions that they wanted answered because they were discovering things that just opened up a whole can of worms. The Steele dossier, of course, was published on January 10 or 11, concurrent with all of this stuff going on with Flynn. The Steele dossier was published by BuzzFeed News. And there were already questions at that time about the veracity of the Steele dossier, and there was already rumors that it was a hoax that had come from the Clinton campaign. Now, that wasn't completely established until Devin Nunes and Katz Patel managed to get the records from using GPS and established that, yes, the Hillary Clinton campaign paid for the Steele dossier. I believe that was in late 2017 that finally came out. But in early 2017, there was a lot of furious activity going on. You had a sitting president that was under investigation for being a Russian agent. And a lot of the evidence that this stuff was based on seemed to be sketchy, to say the least. And so members of Congress were writing to Jeff Sessions asking for answers. Sessions wrote them back, and he said that he had, I believe it was through Stephen Boyd, Assistant U.S. Attorney, that he had appointed John Hubert, U.S. Attorney for Utah, John Hubert, to assemble a team of prosecutors, most of whom were fellow U.S. attorneys, who were going to look at these 2016 election issues. And they had already started their work, by the way, by the time Sessions writes back to Nunes and Meadows and Jordan.
And this is in 2017.
Grassley may have been involved. He's telling, they're already at work. They're already working. Of course, I love to point out the fact that when the FBI Lovebird text messages were released in December 2017, a lot of the names, sections of those text messages were redacted. We're not allowed to see many of the names that Strzok and Page were discussing. I found intriguing that in April, Strzok is texting Lisa Page, I just found out the NSD is not going to be given the charge of the investigation. It's being given to redacted. Okay, and if you're familiar with the FBI has its own national security division inside of it, and so if you read from reading those text messages in December of 2017, I thought, wow, okay, Strzok and Page seemed kind of concerned. They thought that this investigation, it looked to me like it was a leak investigation. They were hoping the leak investigation was going to be handled in-house. And then they were disappointed to discover that it was being given to this other person, whoever that was, but the name was redacted. And then the next month, May 2017, Strzok texts Page again. Should I put off my interview with redacted? We asked that question. And then later on he says, I'm going to continue putting off my interview with redacted. Okay, and so for a period of some almost 3 years, me and all these other SpyGate researchers were kind of speculating to each other, who could this be? Who is it that Strzok and Page were disappointed to find out that the National Security Division wasn't getting the case? It was this redacted person. Okay, and it wasn't until October of 2020 when the acting director of National Intelligence at that time was John Ratcliffe, I believe it was. John Ratcliffe declassified a whole bunch of stuff. One of the things he declassified was he declassified more of the Lovebird text messages, which means many of the redactions were finally removed from those text messages. And so I eagerly looked through the new release, and I discovered who it was that
who's redacted.
Peter Strzok and Lisa Page were urgently texting each other about in April, May of 2017. What Strzok texted was, I found out that the case isn't being given to the NSD, it's being given to Durham. And then the next month,
in 2017.
Yeah. And the next month, in May 2017, should I keep postponing my interview with Durham? And then later that day he texts, I'm going to continue putting off my interview with Durham. So here you have in April and May of 2017, two of the key SpyGate plotters are anxiously texting each other about John Durham. Okay, and so we discovered that when Sessions wrote this letter to the members of Congress, the U.S. Attorney John Huber of Utah, geographically, if you wanted to have an investigation of D.C. corruption run outside of D.C., you can't draw a longer line between Washington, D.C. and Utah. That's about as far away from the DC swamp as you can get. So I've been convinced for some time now that when Hoover was putting that team together of prosecutors and U.S. attorneys who were going to be digging into the 2016 election issues, which we now know you can't do that without digging into the Trump-Russia collusion hoaxes. You can't, okay, they're inseparable. I've been convinced for a long time now that John Durham was a member of that team.
And so that gets to the point of how many do you believe were a member of that team?
I believe there were several. Jeffrey Jensen of Missouri was a member of the team. I believe, you see, a lot of people have this idea that when you form a team to do something like this, everybody stays there until the very end. The fact is, what happens is many people are role players. They're brought in to do a specific investigation on a specific issue. And when their part in the play is done, their part of the investigation is done, they hand in their results and they move on. I believe that's what happened with both Jeffrey Jensen and John Bash of Texas. Jensen, okay, once again, we're going back to the Flynn case. Jensen was the U.S. attorney for Eastern District of Missouri. Okay, it wasn't until early 2019 William Barr got around to letting everybody know. Oh, by the way, a while back, I tapped U.S. Attorney Jensen to go into the Mueller Special Counsel's office, which was being run out of the U.S. Attorney's office in Washington, D.C. Jesse K. Liu was the Washington, D.C. District U.S. Attorney at that time. So Jensen went into that office, the Mueller Counsel's office, and he also went into FBI headquarters. He was tasked with investigating how the Mueller Special Counsel conducted itself during its prosecution of General Flynn. And Jensen did a very thorough job. Now, how thorough a job did he do? Well, when he went into the Mueller Special Counsel's office and when he went into the FBI 7th floor and did his search, he came up with a bunch of exculpatory documents that the Mueller Special Counsel and the Crossfire Hurricane team had been hiding from the court and from General Flynn's defense team. The moment the Department of Justice got a look at these documents, they immediately announced that they were dropping the case against General Flynn. And of course, that's when we got the whatever it was, 6 or 7 month circus with the D.C. court judge, Emmett Sullivan, who refused to dismiss the case. He instead got so absurd, Sullivan was actually floating with the idea of bringing in his own independent prosecutor to continue the case against Flynn before he finally gave up. I believe it was December of 2021 or whatever. He finally gave up the ghost. And that, or maybe it was 2020, December 2020. Finally, okay, fine, I give up, and he dismissed the case. But I've said for a long time now, it's very clear if you examine the evidence that the Mueller Special Counsel entered into a criminal conspiracy with certain FBI personnel that they understood from the start that General Flynn had not committed any prosecutable crime, and that they decided to prosecute him anyway. And when Jeffrey Jensen began handing off these documents to Flynn Defense Counsel Sidney Powell, when these documents were made public, you could clearly see the exculpatory nature of many of these documents, and the majority of them, stamped right on the bottom or the top, on the margin, is the stamp, the Mueller Special Counsel's office stamp, showing, yes, indeed, they had these documents in their possession, and they had not turned them over to the court. They had not turned them over to Flynn defense counsel, and I will point out one of the reasons this whole Flynn case was bizarre is early on when it was announced that the original judge was being had the story is he recused himself. I'm still not so sure that's what happened. I believe he was forced to recuse himself. When that happened and a new judge was announced, and it was going to be Judge Emmett Sullivan, Powell was initially very happy at that announcement because Sullivan had been the guy that had been in charge of another case, the one involving Senator Ted Stevens, where a massive amount of prosecutorial misconduct occurred, and he had called for a special investigator to look into that case that wrote a very damning report and proved that Ted Stevens had been completely railroaded. Okay, and since that case, Emmett Sullivan had a penchant for whenever he took on a new case, he immediately wrote a directive to the government prosecutors in which he ordered them to hand over any and all exculpatory evidence that had yet to be given to the defense, and he did this in the Michael Flynn case. And whether Judge Sullivan ever wanted to admit that or not, or whether the fake news media ever wanted to talk about that or not, it has been established beyond reasonable doubt that the prosecutors in the Flynn case defied Judge Emmett Sullivan's order that they hand over all exculpatory evidence immediately. And Sullivan did that in the Flynn case at the time he took it over. And then it was almost a year later that Johnson goes in there and finds all these exculpatory documents that the Mueller Special Counsel and the FBI classified hurricane team had been hiding and holding back. So they defied a direct order from the judge. So,
which makes it even more interesting why he left it open for so long after that. Once it was presented to him that they had done that, based on, as you point out,
it should have immediately demanded that there be sanctions against these prosecutors for withholding this evidence from the court and from the defense counsel.
So
that never happened.
Right. So we've talked about the Utah, we've talked about Texas, we've talked about Missouri, Flynn, and one of the U.S. district attorneys was tasked with the Clinton.
Yeah. Okay.
So how's that plug in?
I'm not ready to go there yet.
Okay.
One more point.
Okay.
All right. The Mueller Special Counsel prosecuted over 30 people at the time that it was active, 22 months, from May 2017 all the way to whatever it was, May or June of 2019. It would really stretch my credulity to believe that they were Boy Scouts and how they handled these 30 some odd other prosecutions. They were Boy Scouts, but against General Flynn, that's the only case they handled where they engaged in egregious prosecutorial misconduct. Now, because we only seen the documents Justin gave to Sidney Powell, which were related directly to the Flynn case, people assumed that when U.S. Attorney Johnson was digging through all those records inside the Mueller Special Counsel's office, he was looking only at Flynn case documents. And they assumed that when he went to FBI headquarters, the FBI building, and was searching through the records there, he ignored everything but what specifically had to do with the Michael Flynn case. I'm not so sure that's correct. If you'll recall, at the same time that he finally got around to letting everybody know that John Durham was now a special counsel, Uh, he did this while he was on his way out the door in December of 2020. William Barr also informed Congress that Durham's scope has been extended to include investigating how the Mueller Special Counsel prosecuted its cases. And so Jeffrey Jensen would have a lot of insight into exactly how the Mueller Special Counsel went about prosecuting not only General Flynn, how they prosecuted George Papadopoulos, how they prosecuted Roger Stone, how they prosecuted Michael Cohen, how they prosecuted Paul Manafort, how they prosecuted like several dozen individuals. Just in the Roger Stone case, there was a massive amount of things that have come out about how badly that case was handled. So when people look at the scope of what Durham was given, okay, this is the confines. You're supposed to investigate everything within it. He's investigating how a FISA warrant to spy on. Okay, you have to understand the FISA warrant. Carter Page's name is on it, all right, but that gives them the right to probably. With the two hot rolls, they're probably spying on probably over 100 people whose communications were swept up in this. Okay, it's not just Cody Page. So you have to understand, Durham is investigating how a surveillance warrant ended up being granted to spy on a presidential campaign based on fake shit that came straight from the dirty trick squad working for the other campaign in that election. Okay, that's what he's tasked originally with investigating. But what sprang out of the fake shit that led to that FISA warrant? The Mueller Special Counsel was the direct creation of the Trump-Russia collusion hoax. That's why it's included inside of Durham's scope. So when people tell me Durham's finished, Durham's writing his final report, I say bullshit. He hasn't even scratched the surface yet. A lot of people think that he's raising the white flag, after 2 acquittals based on the most minor of charges he could have brought. He's raised the white flag, and you have anonymous sources spouting off to the New York Times, while they're also staking down fake narratives about why Barr and Durham were in Italy. They're staking down this fake narrative that they were there to investigate Trump. And they're trying to stake down this narrative about why Durham is so very, very interested in getting his hands on some email communications from a key George Soros aide who somehow appears to be involved in this whole Trump-Russia collusion hoax scandal. Okay, and while all this is going on, Durham's just saying, he throw his hands up and say, I give up, and he's writing his final report. Okay. You're being told this by anonymous sources. I gotta make this comment before we go on. I just find it amazing that I see people out there who know how this game is played. They know how these fake leaks work. You had 22 months to watch how fake news sells fake leaks about special counsel investigations, and yet people are coming out and saying, "Yeah, I know that's a fake. That's a false narrative about Barr and Durham in Italy, and that's a false narrative about Durham and the Soros aid in the email." But I totally believe it when these fake leakers tell me that Durham's finished. He's wrapped it up and he's out there banging out his final report right now. Okay, I'm like, you don't believe these fake leakers on point A or point B, but I find it really curious that you buy the fake leak C. Why are you buying that? So, I mean, it's just, I'll wait till I hear it from Durham or from Merrick Garland, who, of course, because his boss is being investigated as part of the Durham Special Counsel, the moment Durham lifts his pinky finger to signal, Merrick, I'm almost done, Merrick, I'm working on my final report. Okay, Merrick Garland's gonna call a press conference and announce that just as fast as he can arrange it. So that's my take on it. All right, Brian, how can you think Durham's writing that final report? No, I don't. Okay, so let's go on from there.
The Clinton
Okay,
aspect
Clinton.
coming in from Fusion GPS.
Nobody remembers this because it was 3 years ago. Okay. John Huber, part of John Huber's investigation in Utah, he had a team of investigators digging into the Clinton Foundation. And it wasn't just people in the federal government. The reason people could not get any leaks out of the real ongoing investigations is because not only were there good people in charge of this very, very far away from the Washington, D.C. leak culture, they were also using private firms as part of their investigations, firms that were stacked with very experienced investigators. Many of them previously worked for the federal government, but now they're in private practice, you see. So this is why, because Sessions and Rosenstein brought in the private pros to do a lot of the investigating until many of the snakes had been cleaned out of the federal agency. So that's why there were never any leaks. So Huber had a team both of federal people and private investigators that were digging into the Clinton Foundation for some period of 3 years. Nobody knew he was doing that at the time. Then, I believe it was in 2019 or 2020, Fox News comes out and says, oh, by the way, Huber handed off all the Clinton Foundation documents and evidence that he had. He made the handoff to John Durham, which is something nobody remembers. Yes, but Huber and his team were looking into the Clinton Foundation. And John Durham got the handoff. And the DOJ acknowledged that. The reporters called that, and the DOJ said, that happened. Yeah, Huber, Clinton Foundation, gave it to Durham. Yes. So they acknowledged that happened. So it's a very wide scope Durham's investigating. It involves not just the Clinton campaign. It involves the Clinton Foundation. Now, all the things Clinton Foundation was wrapped up in. It involves, this is one reason why they're so concerned about that trip to Italy. It involves all the Five Eyes intelligence agencies. That's, when Barr and Durham did their trip around the world. They went to the UK, Italy, whichever, I forget specifically which countries are in this, but Italy's one of them, the United Kingdom, Australia, they hit all 5 of them. And so something about that Italy trip that really makes the fake news and their controllers in the intelligence community really nervous. So they rushed out this New York Times hit piece last week to try to nail down or stake down a narrative about why Barr and Durham were really there. And supposedly had to do with their investigating Trump for some financial thing.
It's always Trump. Okay, so 27 leak investigations.
Yeah, something else nobody remembers because this happened in 2017. The wrap-up smear, the way it works is, okay, Hillary Clinton gave the okay when she was approached by her top foreign policy advisor in July 2016. Man, that email scandal was really, really hurting her in the polls, and they knew that something had to be done about that. So her top foreign policy advisor, who is a guy by the name of Jake Sherman, Biden's current NSA guy, top foreign policy guy.
Jake Sullivan.
Okay, Jake Sullivan. Okay, he approaches Clinton with a plan. This is according to the former CIA director John Brennan's handwritten notes. I'm not making any of this up. This is directly from John Brennan's own notes. Sullivan approaches Clinton and says they've come up with a way to lessen the damage from Clinton's email server scandal, which if you'll remember, involves her being caught having used a private server to host classified information on an unsecured server. Okay. It's holding her really bad, so they want to find a way to distract people from that. So Sherman broaches this strategy. Hillary will create a fake Russia scandal. We'll create a fake scandal around Trump as a distraction, a bright, shiny object. And we'll use our dirty trick squad to go out there and try to get the federal agencies to take these hoaxes from us. It doesn't matter if the hoaxes go anywhere or not, because the moment we talk the federal agencies into taking the hoax from us, we're going to rush to our media allies and we're going to leak to them that the Donald J. Trump presidential campaign is under federal investigation for Russian collusion. That was the plan. Okay, and according to Brennan's handwritten notes, Hillary Clinton was approached with this plan around July 2016. And they told her the plan, and she gave the nod, and she said, yes, she approved it. Okay, and so that's why in July 2016, you suddenly have the Alpha Bank hoax bringing to life inside the Perkins Coie law firm. And that's why you suddenly see a big flurry of activity at Fusion GPS with Glenn Simpson and Christopher Steele really churning out the Steele dossier memos because Clinton gave the nod. Okay. I forgot where we were going. Okay, let me note that real quick. "27 leak investigations," right? Okay. Sorry about that. Okay, 27 leak investigations. The wrap-up smear, it succeeded beyond their wildest dreams. Clinton's dirty trick squad. Okay, this plan to create a Trump-Russia scandal to distract from her own, the plan to create a fake Trump-Russia scandal to distract the public from her very real classified, stuff on a private service scandal. It succeeded beyond their wildest dreams because they got the federal agencies to take them both. Because, the FBI took the Alpha Bank scandal when Michael Sussman approached James Baker at the FBI. They took it from them. Now, okay, it didn't lead them anywhere. Nothing really came about as a result of that. They investigated that. Said, shit, there's nothing here. And they dropped it. Okay, they closed it. But what happened? They followed their plan. They got the FBI to take the Alpha Bank scandal. So what did Jake Sullivan and Hillary Clinton do upon knowing that the FBI had taken the bait? They went straight to their media allies and they announced that the Donald Trump campaign was now under investigation for Russian collusion involving a Russian server, at the Alpha Bank in Russia, communicating with a server way over here in Trump Tower, and that was probably some secret back channel communication between Trump and Vladimir Putin. And so you had Hillary Clinton release on Twitter and elsewhere that big media saying that they did. They rolled that out. Donald Trump under investigation by the FBI. Okay, yeah, they did that. It worked like a charm. Okay, now the other hoax that they created, the Still Doctor hoax, they also got the FBI. Take that. Of course, there was a massive series of leaks from inside the FBI and the DOJ feeding a lot of stuff to the media people, even before the Still Doctor was publicly rolled out on January 10th or 11th, whichever it was, by BuzzFeed. Okay. That also succeeded beyond their wildest dreams. But in this case, the FBI not only took the Still Doctor, took the fake shit, they put it in a FISA warrant and they okayed legal federal surveillance of the Trump campaign based on this fake stuff. It came straight from Hillary Clinton's dirty trick squad at Fusion GPS. So when Donald Trump comes into office in January 2017, and when Jeff Sessions comes into office, there's been a massive amount of leaking because, like I said, this only works. The wrap-up smear only works. You have to, if you have the leaks to go with it. You got the leak stuff. Okay, you're not supposed to leak details about ongoing FBI investigations. That's exactly what happened here. It happened in both instances. The FBI took the bait. The leaks immediately happened to the media to alert everybody, especially the voters out there. Ooh, you don't want to vote for that Trump fellow. He's under investigation for being owned by the Russians. Okay, that happened not just once, that happened twice. And it happened with the Still Doctor also. And the Still Doctor, while Alpha Bank just got a brief mention, the Still Doctor leaks went on for months.
Right.
Months. Okay, so on taking office, Jeff Sessions, and nobody at the time believed this was real, okay? He announces that there are 27 ongoing leak investigations at the FBI going on right now. 27. That's more than 2 dozen. And there's something else that was announced at that time, which nobody believed either. A special FBI leak hunting unit has been created.
Right.
Very secret. It is a counterintelligence unit. Does its work completely in secret. So Jeff Sessions announced that back in 2017, and it quickly sank beneath the waves. Everybody forgot about it because people all think that wasn't real. There's no way that's true. 27 leak investigations. Come on, man. You'd be investigating all the people that were working with the Clintons to leak all the stuff out of the federal agencies to target people to get them investigated. You guys are all corrupt. There's no way that's happening. Oh, but it really well could be Jeff Sessions, the most honest man to ever be in the U.S. Senate. Maybe he wasn't. Why? There really is a secret unit that was created to investigate leaks. And they really did have 27 leak investigations going on. I'll give you one example of what I think grew out of those 27 leak investigations. It just got Adam Schiff and Eric Swalwell passed off the Intelligence Committee. I was saying back in 2017, it's obvious that members of Congress have been leaking classified information for years and getting away with it. And then Jeff Sessions comes in January 2017, makes all this noise that he's not going to put up with this, that this is going to stop, that this is never going to happen again. We're going to stop this. And then there's the announcement, 27 leak investigations have started, and he's created a secret leak hunting unit. And then nobody hears anything for about 3 years. Well, 4 years. It isn't until April or May of 2021 it comes out that Adam Schiff, the chair of the House Select Panel Committee on Intelligence, key member of the Gang of Eight, has been under federal surveillance for 3 years. He had been under federal surveillance for 3 years via a federal grand jury that had been accessing his phone records and a gag order from a federal judge. So that Apple could not alert him to the fact that he was being tracked. He was being geolocated and geo-tracked, and all of his emails and text message communications were being intercepted by federal prosecutors. They only discovered this. This only made the news back in spring of 2021 when the people who were running that grand jury decided not to renew the gag order for the 4th year. And the gag order expired. And the moment it expired, Apple called up Adam Schiff and Eric Swalwell and about 70 other people. Hey, listen, man, you've been under federal surveillance for 3 years now, and we couldn't tell you because we had a gag order from a federal judge. And so Adam Schiff and Eric Swalwell hold a press conference. Oh, we're shocked. We're shocked that this is even allowed, that sitting members of Congress can be investigating a secret like this. This is an outrage. This is a travesty. Okay? And nobody remembers any of this went on. Nobody remembers it, okay? But Kevin McCarthy gave you a strong hint of it. He said, man, if you got the briefing I got from the FBI, you wouldn't have Eric Swalwell on any committee. And everybody thinks that just relates to,
Sleeping with the Chinese spy.
The Chinese spy that he was sleeping with. Oh, I think it goes far beyond that. So 27 leak investigations and Schiff and Swalwell and all these other guys being investigated for the leaking they've been doing. I knew that was going on. I see people have this idea that when the Department of Justice or the good guys start an investigation on somebody into spying and leaking classified information, they're going to announce that to you. They're going to tell you that they're doing that. Okay, because people don't think clearly, people don't understand how the real world works. Like Thomas Wichter was always saying, nobody knows how anything works. Okay, but I knew, you'll find me saying this in my columns at the Epoch Times, I'm positive. Remember, the reason Rosenstein and others of the DOJ can't share key information with the members of Congress is as soon as they give them this classified evidence, they're going to leak it. And see, Congress, I don't mean to shock you, but Congress is made up of a ton of political partisans, and as soon as you hand them explosive, classified evidence in ongoing criminal cases, guess what's going to happen to your evidence? Half of them, roughly half, are going to leak that in a way where they can defend their friends. They're going to leak it as a defensive measure. And they're going to blow your investigation and try to cover for their friends by leaking, and they put a positive spin on it to get out ahead of the story. The other half are going to leak it to damage their political enemies, and they're going to try to spin it and make it look just as bad for them as they can possibly make it. So, I know a lot of people don't believe this, but you go back and read my columns at the Epoch Times. Hey, July 2018, I was saying this. Members of Congress are under investigation for criminal leaking. You cannot share evidence with these people that are subjects of federal investigations. You cannot do it. It's obvious. It's common sense. Okay, I make this point, and people would dismiss it. That's why I knew it was coming, and it dropped. That Swalwell and Schiff, and they say 70 other people, other members of Congress, the members of their staff, even some family members, were swept up in this. 70 plus were being spied on by a federal grand jury. Oh, but then nothing happened. Nothing happened because this was like 2 years ago, or a year and a half ago that this came out. Oh, nothing happened. There were no big indictments unsealed. Yeah, that's always, you can always say, well, nothing happened yet, so nothing is ever going to happen. Yeah, some people can take that attitude. Okay? But I see things happening. I see Schiff suddenly being tossed off, not just, losing the gavel of the House Intelligence Committee. He's tossed off the committee. And there are signs going on. I'm pretty sure that when the federal prosecutors who are handling this, who haven't leaked shit about what they're really doing, about the cases they're building against Swalwell and Schiff and several other members of Congress, you're not going to know what they've been doing until they're ready to tell you. And even then, they probably understood when they didn't renew that gag order for year 4. They pretty much had to know what Apple was going to do the moment the gag order was lifted. So that's like, that may have been, they wanted that to happen. They wanted to fire a warning shot against any of these people that are out there thinking it was leaking. Hey, guess what? We spied on the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee for 3 years, and he didn't know shit about it while we were doing it. And he only found out afterwards. So chew on that.
Okay. So James Baker's testimony with Durham?
Yes. I began to have an inkling who it might be that Lisa Page and Peter Strzok were talking about. This was in January of 2019, I think it was. James Baker had been testifying before a House committee the previous October, and they were digging into Russiagate stuff. Mark Meadows leading the panel, if I recall right. Jim Jordan, Mark Meadows were doing most of the questioning, and James Baker's being interviewed by the committee, and he's asked a question by Mark Meadows, and James Baker starts to answer the question. The lawyer interrupts and says, "Don't answer that. I'm gonna ask you. I'm gonna say he can't answer that." When the members of the committee ask for an explanation, he says, "Well, I cannot have my client answer that because he is the subject of an ongoing investigation by a prosecutor, a federal prosecutor." Okay, and at that time, Huber, it was known, had gone public about Huber at that time. So I think it's Jim Jordan speaks up and says, "Oh, you mean Huber?" And James Baker's lawyer goes, "No, it's Durham." And I think Jordan didn't really hear him. He said, "You mean John Huber, right? Of Utah." And the lawyer had to answer, "No, it's Durham. John Durham, U.S. Attorney for Connecticut, is investigating James Baker as part of a federal leak investigation." And so that transcript, this did not come from John Durham's office. Somebody in Congress leaked that transcript to Jeff Carlson of the Epoch Times, and they ran a story on that. I believe it was January of 2020. January of 2019. Yes, January of 2019. Because of course Durham, they bring Durham out publicly. I think it's in like June of 2019 when William Barr brings him out. So behold the man. Here's the guy who's gonna who's going to lead the Russiagate investigation. Okay. So Durham was still under wraps in January of 2019. His name had not gone out publicly yet. And so when the Epoch Times got their hands on this transcript and published it, and they realized that U.S. Attorney for Connecticut John Durham is investigating the SpyGate meetings. That pointed me. I couldn't prove it at that time. I suspected that John Durham could be the guy that Page and Struck are talking about. You know, but the difference between suspecting something and proving something is very different. And then, of course, they bring out John Durham publicly in June 2019. But there's still no proof that he is that guy that they're talking about. I had to wait I had to wait till Ratcliffe made that declassification in October 2020, or more than a year later. And finally they say, yes, Durham was active in investigating Russiagate leaks in by April of 2017. So Baker played a key role because that's where Durham's name first surfaces, and that's when a lot of SpyGate researchers started to realize how long he's actually been building these cases that he's been handling.
So that pretty much covers all of the stuff that we were talking about yesterday. However, we did a real quick inquiry into where are they all now. One of the discoveries was Jensen and Huber and Rosenstein are all where now?
They're all working for private firms that do special investigations that can be hired to supplement federal investigators in their building of cases. I knew they were doing this early on back in 2017, 2018, that when Sessions was still there and Rosenstein was still there.
That they were using
the big reason they weren't getting any leaks, I mean, the D.C. leak culture, of course, was extremely interested in whatever the Sessions Department of Justice was doing and looking into all of the irregularities around the 2016 election, all the leaking that went on, and how Trump ended up being spied on. And in his campaign and then in his presidency itself, and they were keenly interested in whatever Sessions was looking into, and yet they couldn't seem to get any leaks. They couldn't get any leaks out of him. I happen to believe, this is my theory, that's why they had the Mueller Special Counsel created for them. They got all the leaks they could possibly want to hold their attention, keep them out of the way for the 22 months that this Mueller Special Counsel was involved. But as far as what was really going on there, looking into all this stuff, being led by Huber and the U.S. attorneys under him, none of that stuff ever leaked. As a matter of fact, it should, if people stop for a moment and think about it, it should boggle their minds that Sessions and Rosenstein managed to set up an investigation that resulted in a grand jury that spied on sitting members of Congress for 3 years.
With zero leaks.
They got no leaks about it. I suspect a lot of this is because they're using outside contractors.
Okay. And one last one. The leak to Ollie Watkins from the Senate Intel Committee.
Yes.
So it's interesting in light of what we just found out about how the classified information, how does it get out of the Senate Intel Committee to be in Joe Biden's physical residence? One of the little talked about aspects because it was discovered 3 years ago and has kind of been swept under the rug.
Nobody remembers.
So tell us the story.
Okay, it was 3 years ago. We got an object lesson on why the DOJ hesitates to share classified information related to ongoing criminal investigations with the Congress. It involved the Carter Page FISA warrant, which was given under seal to the U.S. Senate. It was delivered in the hands of a gentleman named James Wolfe, who was a longtime Senate intelligence security chief. He's the guy that handles and controls the flow of classified information to the
Senate
secure compartmentalized intelligence facility.
The SCIF.
It's inside the Senate building. I believe it's in the basement. So he's the guy that's in charge of that. It's called a SCIF. There, it's SCIF. So 3 years ago, 4 years ago by now, in 2023, that Carter Page FISA warrant was delivered to the Senate SCIF. And James Wolfe was the guy who put it there. Yeah, the other day on Maria Bartiromo's show, I watched Ted Cruz talk about what it's like going into that SCIF. He said he likened it to the opening of Get Smart. You remember seeing Get Smart with all those doors open and close, and you walk in there through a series of doors, security doors to scan, and you have to hand over all your electronic devices. You have to give up your phone, electronic watches, everything. AirPods, nothing electronic is allowed in there. Hearing aids probably be the only thing they allow. You give all that up. Then you walk through some more doors. You scan. They make absolutely sure you have nothing electronic in it. Then you go into the room and you have to sign for what particular document. I don't want to look at this document. I am Senator so-and-so, and you give that to them. They look at it. They leave the room. They go get the document. They bring it to you. They put it in front of you, and they leave you there with it and close the door. I guess they have some way of loading them, hit a button or whatever. Okay, I'm done. They come back in. They take the document back from you, and they go put it where it belongs, and then you leave, certainly not having the document with you. You do not have the document any longer. You do not have it. You walk through the doors again. They may even search you again on your way out. I don't know. You get your electronics back, and then you can leave. When Sandy Berger, the guy who used to be an advisor to the Clintons, when he tried to defeat this system by sticking some classified documents down his pants leg in his underwear, okay, he was caught. They actually stung him, They caught him the first time, but they let him go. That's how long my memory is. They caught him the first time, they let him go. We're talking about this shit happened in 1990, They caught him, they realized right away, oh, shit, did the Clinton guy just try to sneak some documents out of here? Let him go. We know what he took. He was after his second visit, and he was trying to sneak out a second set of documents. They caught him doing it a second time. When they caught him with the, what's he gonna say? Wow, how'd that classified document get down my pants leg like that? Okay, he's caught. He got slapped on the wrist, of course. And a lot of people don't remember. But that's how hard it is. If you're gonna take an actual classified document and try to sneak it out of a Senate SCIF or a very secure facility where they're following the rule, they set it up that way. It's very hard to do that unless the guy who's running the facility is a crook. Because what happened back when that FISA warrant was put in the Senate SCIF is that when he got it, James Wolfe went out of the SCIF with it. So he's the guy that brings the stuff to the SCIF. They send it from the federal agencies. Here's 50 documents from the ATF to put in the SCIF. And he's the one that signs it. They give it to him. He takes it into the SCIF, the SCIF is the library for the SCIF. The very classified stuff. He's the one that has access to it. And the senators come in, sit in the room, and they tell them what's listed there, what they want to see. He brings it to them, and then he takes it back and puts it back where it goes. Okay, but when he's outside the stuff, he got his phone with him. And what he did with that Carter Page FISA warrant is that he took a series of pictures. He took pictures. 30-something, the warrant's like 36 pages long. So he took 36 pictures with his phone of each page of the Carter Page FISA warrant. And he sent it to his girlfriend, who happened to be reporter Ali Watkins of the New York Times. And so almost as soon as that classified, sealed FISA warrant was delivered to the Senate itself, James Wolfe leaked it personally to a New York Times reporter. So this happened because the guy who's in charge of this SIF is the one doing the leaking.
I think
So if he's willing to take pictures and send them to a reporter, the question that Roxane and other people are now posing to me is, what else was he willing to do?
And I think she actually worked for a different news organization. I think she moved to the New York Times after she got into all the trouble. She worked for McCloskey, BuzzFeed, and several other organizations. And I think it was while she was at one of those, because
I remember she was at the New York Times when she worked, when she got the picture.
And so what I find interesting, of course, when you have a TSSCI, one of the ways you lose it quickly is if you are in a compromising situation. For example, if you try to have an affair, as this guy did, Wolf, and people know that you're having an affair, you are subject to blackmail. And anytime that situations like that come up, your clearance is immediately pulled because you have been compromised. And there were repeated allegations of misconduct, the alleged affair. I also this morning found an investigation that was done out of a special unit, much like the one you just described, of the Border Patrol, oddly enough, that came across the fact that he was compromised. That information had been floating around in the government in the right circles, and it wasn't until all of this got exposed, but the affair had been going on for about 6 years by that time. They had tracked the two of them traveling together to Spain and all kinds of different things. Yeah.
Okay.
So they knew they knew he was compromised, and he stayed in that position even though many in the government knew he was compromised. And so that's what I found ironic, that people are scratching their head. How did Joe Biden get classified material out of the SCIF? Well, how did Ali Watkins get classified material out of the SCIF? The whole reason you don't have somebody that's compromised in charge of classified material is because they can be blackmailed.
You know, it's far easier to do, if you want access to classified information, it's far easier to just copy it or take a picture of it. If somebody says, no, I don't want a copy, I don't want a picture, I want the actual document, I want that document. Okay, you would need an insider to pull that off. Not only would you need more than one insider to pull this off. Not only does the guy at that particular facility have to be in on it, take that document, the people who would get the document back have to have a reason not to report it missing. Like, ATF sends 50 documents. Let's pick something that Biden would be interested in. The House Intelligence Committee has stuff sent from the
Well, the State
Department of Homeland
the
Security.
State Department. If the State Department generates classified information
50
about
documents were put in that stuff, and they only get 48 back.
correct, so the originating office in the State Department may produce a classified assessment of Ukraine, the oil industry, or whatever. So if the State Department talks to members of the Senate about it, members of the Senate says, "Oh, I want to see that. It's classified. Send it over to our SCIF."
Right.
So it gets to the SCIF, and it may be one of 15 or 16 documents. It's put in the SCIF, in the file. The senators come down, they check it out, they look at it, they do whatever. Eventually, even if they kept it in the SCIF, there is a D-class date, and let's say it's 10 years from now.
Disposed of, it goes back
At
to
some point, correct. And so they either need to come back and get the material and return it to its originator, because at the 10-year point, it's reviewed for D-class. And then you have to go through the process. It can be extended to 25 and, with the JFK 50 and plus. So at some point, it goes, the Senate does not originate any classified information. They are not an originator. So it all is supposed to go back to wherever it came from. So, and I've made this point repeatedly, somebody has an open log, if those are original documents, indicating they were never returned. Somebody, somewhere, whoever the originator is. The CIA, the FBI, the State Department.
When you understand how many documents are classified every year, how the paper shuffle works, how many documents are shuffled around.
It's not that difficult to not account for one or two, but we're well past one or two.
Yeah,
and
this is systemic.
Correct. And so and that's the point you made, Brian, and I will give you full credit for this. Some industrious reporter needs to ask, were the documents originals? Because it matters.
Is there any evidence that the copies or the pictures?
Because
you can make a full-size copy of something. There are amazing copy machines out there, and have been for some time. I worked in a copy shop at one point. It is easy to create a facsimile that is very, very close to the original. You know how to do it.
The only thing that I would say when you have, I would doubt, I don't know this, I'm just talking off the top of my head. It'd be hard to imagine the SCIF at the Senate having a classified copier. It has to be copied on a specific copier. And they're not all that great. I'm sure they're much better than when I left, but they really weren't all that great. But again, if somebody took the document out of the SCIF, which they're not supposed to, that guy that was in charge would have had to have known, even if they went upstairs and made a copy on a good copier and brought it back, or as you suggest, they took pictures of it. It would be interesting to know whether or not the documents they're finding are photocopies, originals.
Because it is given the security that's supposed to be in place in these steps, walking out of there with a still classified document and nobody knowing it's missing. If it's an original document, then you have to have a couple people that are in on this. And it's harder to see how they could keep this under wraps for so long.
And it's very interesting to me that going back in preparing for this with Brian, just between yesterday and today, and reading through some of the stuff that he was going to talk about, so I could be a little bit better. He was posing questions. He was trying to stump me yesterday, so I want to make sure I was prepared for today. Finding little nuggets like Wolf, and the fact that he's already been documented and convicted of lying because they did not charge him with the exposure of classified information, which they should have. He was convicted of lying to investigators.
Right, that's why he only got, the GOP was asking for 2 years, he only got 2 months.
Yes. So, but I found that interesting that we have a source for the Biden classified information from when he was in the Senate, because this guy had been in charge for over 20 years of the SCIF.
Yeah, he was there a long time.
So it does pay to go back and circle back through this stuff occasionally, because what we found out most recently ties back to it.
It's interesting that we still don't know what was it that led Biden's lawyers to go look in the Biden Penn Center, that think tank. What was it that put the idea in their heads? Let's go look through the closet at that think tank and see if we can find any classified documents in there.
And could it
what was it that led them to go do that? We still don't know.
But could it have been the source, whoever originally classified the information, like the State Department, called the Senate SCIF saying, hey, we've got stuff signed out to you that is expiring.
Yeah.
It's at the 10-year point. Where's our documents? And somebody
just realized we never got this back.
Yes, and somebody from the SCIF.
The Biden have taken it.
Yeah, it could have been. You don't know.
Could be. No. And now they found 3 separate catches of documents in 3 separate places. The Biden Penn Center, the garage of the house on Barley Road, and then the library of the house on Barley Road. And today we get the search of the beach house, I don't know how you say it,
Rehoboth Beach.
Yeah. And okay, they say, well, we didn't find anything, but I just find it amazing.
They had 3 weeks to get rid of it.
The legal team had, they found the original catch of documents at the Biden Penn Center on November 2nd. And then 70 days go by, and then they search the house and they find the second catch of documents in a box in the garage.
That's so
and
bizarre.
Then, supposedly they searched the house again. The legal team did. They searched the house again and they said, okay, we've searched, we looked everywhere. We can't find anything else, so we're going to say that there are no other classified documents in the house. And then the DOJ goes, oh, it's okay. We'll send the FBI in there to do their own search. And then the FBI goes down and they find some dispute, whether it's 6 or 12 or how many it is. They find more classified documents in the house. And so they had weeks to get ready for that. And so when they say they didn't find anything in the house, that's Biden's White House counsel saying that. I'm going to wait till I hear it from the DOJ itself.
Okay, that's the end of my notes.
Okay, so we're good. Okay, so we want to go over all of this because there's a lot of things in play. There are a lot of things going on. A lot of people do not remember how we got here. They do not remember the steps that were involved. If something didn't happen in the last 2-3 months, many people are captive to the present news cycle. They don't remember anything that happened more, 6 months ago, much less 3 or 4 years ago. But one reason I'm confident Durham is not finished is because I'm able to take the 40,000-foot view and look down. And I understand what the scope was. I understand what the play was here from the beginning. I understand it takes an average of about 5 years for a federal investigation to conclude. And a lot of people aren't happy with that. But, my job is not to tell people what they want to hear. My job is not to go with the flow. My job is to report the facts and then give my opinion based on the facts. So understand this is a counter narrative to what a lot of people are telling you. They're telling you Durham is finished, he's stopped, he's over with, he's writing his final report. I just want to leave you with the fact the same people telling you that are the same anonymous sources leaking to the New York Times that are telling you all these fake narratives about George Soros and his aide, and the fake narrative about why Barr and Durham really went to Italy. So just keep that in mind. Great job, Roxane. Thanks for those questions.
Brian. Thanks for being here.
And I'll get this up, and maybe we'll do this again
Okay.
sometime.